Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we've got one of the most unique stacks of sources I think we've ever seen. We're not looking at some finished philosophical text.
Not at all.
We are diving into something incredibly raw. It's like a stream of consciousness journal, a kind of spiritual blueprint from someone deep in the battle for self-mastery.
That's a great way to put it. It reads less like a diary and more like a personal scripture, but written in, the language of the internet.
Yeah.
There's slang, there are these profound confessions, all with this intense sincerity.
And our mission today is really to decode this internal philosophy, focusing on the main adversary the author identifies, which he calls the ego.
The ego killer.
Exactly. And you feel the heat of his conviction right from the very first lines. It's almost a challenge, questioning how anyone could miss the divine. He asks, how does one not believe in God? And then, do their eyes not work?
And it's not just an abstract religious idea, it's a full sensory thing for him. He points to these really simple sounds of life like birds twittering. But then, in the same breath, he snaps to a pop culture reference. He says it's all here, even down to It's Gonna Be Me by NSYNC. It's this fantastic, jarring mix of the sacred and the profane.
That mix really sets the stage. And what's so fundamental here is how he frames life itself. It's not something we're owed. He sees it as a precious earned gift that he thinks most people just feel entitled to.
And that entitlement, that's where the trouble starts, in his view. He's so aware that we're all gifts to each other, but life becomes miserable when we lose sight of that. And that misery, he says, is caused by this one central force he's fighting.
Which brings us right back to the ego. The ego killer. This is the source of the conflict, and he notes that the ego usually wins, pushing him into a state he calls misery in the deepest parts of the abyss.
Yeah, and when the ego wins, you're in this metaphorical hole where people might hear you, but they refuse to look you in your soul. The whole journal is basically a log of his strategies to try and defeat this thing and climb out of that abyss.
Okay, let's unpack that, because the ego seems to feed on this initial identity crisis. He starts with this massive assertion of personal power.
Oh, immense.
He says, I'm a giant, and I'm the biggest orca in the ocean if far. An apex predator. This is just raw, unchecked confidence.
That apex predator identity is so key. It's his starting point. He sees himself as naturally gifted with this huge drive and influence. He can boast, I'm one of the coolest meth in your city. The ego grabs onto that natural greatness and tries to corrupt it.
But the self-awareness kicks in almost immediately after the arrogance, which is what gives this whole thing its tension, right?
Yeah.
He realizes this power gets abused. He says he regrets who I treated God.
That's the pivot. The drive to be great is constantly checked by the spiritual responsibility that he feels. The ego wants him to be the orca and just dominate everyone, but his higher self knows that just leads to isolation and, regret.
And he feels like he has a history of winning these battles. He claims, I defeated Goliath hell times bozos. So what does that history tell us about the ego?
It tells us the ego is the final Goliath. All the other struggles, addiction, failure, whatever external enemies he had, they were just practice rounds. The ego killer is the final boss. It's the thing inside that uses your own strengths against you.
So if you've beaten all the outside threats, the biggest one left has to be
inside. Exactly.
So how do you go from being this arrogant apex predator to a responsible, humble giant? The journal introduces what I think is the most profound idea here, the mirror principle.
This is where things get really fascinating. It's a radical shift in perspective. He has this moment of clarity where he realizes, I'm just a mirror, Annie. He sees his friends and family telling everyone how cool he is, but he understands he's just reflecting their coolness back at them. He's not the source.
He's the vehicle.
Yeah.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, this idea just cuts the legs out from under the ego, doesn't it? If he's just a reflector, then personal arrogance is basically pointless. He says, the realm is a mirror, and because of that, whatever you believe you receive.
It's a total recentering. The goal shifts from trying to be the greatest to trying to be the clearest mirror you can be. If you believe you deserve blessings, the realm reflects that back at you. If you believe you're miserable,
the realm mirrors that too.
Right.
And that concept flows perfectly into his view of abundance.
Yeah.
Moving from the mirror to opportunity. He describes everyday life as having a bowl saw of blessings at the table of opportunity.
I love that phrase. It suggests abundance isn't a scarcity problem, it's a perception problem. The table is already set, the blessings are in the bowl. All you need is the right posture, the right internal state to sit down and eat.
And he summarizes it so simply. As bulls believe, receive. That's
Yeah.
simple.
It's all about receptivity, which is defined by your belief. And your belief is shaped by the quality of your internal mirror.
Okay, but to maintain that posture, he makes a really bold kind of counterintuitive point. He defends being self-focused. He asks, self-centered, what's wrong with that?
Right, and it sounds like pure selfishness at first, but it's not. It's more of a doctrine of, like, internal fortification to keep the ego from taking over. He says the focus is on equipping my machine internal powers over the short-lived external. You have to build up your own bodysuit and character before you can be a clear mirror for others.
Otherwise, the ego just uses you.
Exactly. Uses you as a tool for external validation.
And that internal focus is so important because he sees conflict and adversity not as problems, but as required training.
Yes. This really challenges the idea that love or faith should be easy. He asks this question. Do you know if you love someone if they never hurt you? No, you don't.
The implication is pretty profound. The ego, the temptation, all the hardship, these things are actually necessary. He says the serpent is required to test your faith. Without that opportunity for failure, you'd never grow.
It's like spiritual forging. You only know how strong your faith is when it's put under pressure. So if you're a clear mirror and you accept the reality of the blessings at the table, then conflict is just the required test to prove the quality of your internal machine.
So if all this opportunity and all these tests are everywhere, why are so many people stuck in that abyss he talks about?
He connects it back to a lack of perception. He says the world only promotes 8 wonders, so you don't look for the other ones.
It's like we're living with self-imposed limits.
Totally. He calls it being unaware. Oh boy. If society tells you there are only 8 wonders, you stop looking for the infinite wonders that are available every single day at that table of opportunity. That unawareness is what the ego preys on.
And this lack of awareness, this abuse of gifts for external gain, it comes into incredibly sharp focus in the most vulnerable part of these sources when he talks about relationships.
Yeah, this part is crucial. This is where the ego gets a face. He ties the abuse of his own power directly to his relationship choices and his sexual discipline. It's the ego at its most manipulative.
It's a really raw confession. He admits to exploiting his natural gifts, specifically his size, his big dick, just to boost his ego. He let women use his body for purely transactional gain.
And he recognizes that he abused this gift. He describes sex as becoming this unenjoyable, mastered ritual. It wasn't about connection at all. It was a performance driven by the ego's need for validation, and he knew both of them weren't treating their bodies, their temples, correctly.
And the real turning point, the lowest point, is when the ego causes a relationship attempt to fail and he finally just breaks, he surrenders. He writes, I apologize to you, God, for playing with you. Thank you for humbling me.
That's the moment. That is the definitive defeat of the ego. The ego killer thrives on pride, on control, humility, and actually thanking God for the failure that stripped all that arrogance away. That's the only path forward. He steps out of being the apex predator and into being the mirror.
And once he's humbled, the entire goal of a relationship shifts. It's not about ego anymore. It's about spiritual alignment. He starts talking about wanting a deep, inseparable connection, using this really strange phrase, I'll alineos her to live in my skin.
It's such a powerful way to put it. It's beyond just living together. It's like their spiritual frequencies become one. And he wants this union specifically because that mutual connection brings them closer to you, G-O-D. The relationship stops being a tool for the ego.
It becomes a spiritual conduit.
Yes. And this whole shift leads to the bigger theme of forgiveness, which acts as the final firewall against the ego's return. He notes that God doesn't hold grudges or resentment.
And if God doesn't hold grudges, why should we? He calls achieving levels of forgiveness with people who hurt you a flex.
Which is such a modern way to frame it, but it's not about charity. It's self-mastery. Forgiveness is the only way to go deeper into your heart and find that real internal freedom. Holding on to resentment just gives the ego another way in.
It really does summarize the entire journey. You shed the apex predator for the humility of the mirror. And this leads to his ultimate equation for living.
A simple, but I think really profound statement that ties it all together. No God, no freedom. No God, no freedom.
When the ego was in charge, there was no freedom, only slavery to the ego. But when he came to know God, he found true freedom, the freedom to use his power responsibly as a mirror.
Which brings us to the really technical part of his philosophy, the actual mechanism for achieving this freedom. He has this unique idea about vibrational frequency.
Right. This is where it gets both scientific and spiritual. He claims the nervous system is the key to raising your vibration to its peak at that coordinates. Why the nervous system?
Well, think about it. It's the physical interface between your internal belief and the external world, right? It's the input-output system. If the realm is a mirror, your nervous system is what processes the reflection. It dictates how your body reacts to stress, to conflict, to opportunity.
So to raise your vibration, you have to master that physical system first. It's the internal machine you have to equip.
Exactly. And the level you have to reach to climb out of the abyss, he says, depends on what your eyes see.
Which links directly back to the mirror principle and the 8 wonders. If your eyes only see scarcity and threat, your nervous system stays in a low vibration fight-or-flight state. That's ego-K territory.
But if you intentionally train your eyes to see the bowl of blessings, your nervous system raises its frequency and you can access higher states of being. It's about radical, intentional perception.
And this whole realization, this self-mastery, leads to his final integration, a renewed sense of purpose.
Yeah.
He ends by saying this painful journey has to be shared. My voice needs to be heard. Words need to be read.
He realizes that his gifts, his wisdom, all of it hard-won from battling the ego, was a gift that has to be shared to help others. He's finally ready to be that clear mirror.
So what does this entire messy, raw, and frankly contradictory journey mean for you listening? I think this journal gives us a powerful framework. The ego is that adversary we all face, tempting us to use our gifts for validation instead of growth. The lesson seems to be that conscious arrogance, that cockiness from the ego, always leads to a painful humbling.
And only after that humbling can the genuine power of life be unlocked and used responsibly. The foundation for that is accepting that adversity isn't just unavoidable, it's the fundamental tool for our growth. The author is clear. Opportunity for failure must be present to test loyalty, faith, and growth.
And that's our final thought for you to chew on today. If the serpent, the challenge, the Goliath is required to test your faith, what failure or conflict are you facing right now that's actually meant to build the necessary structure in your internal machine? What ego battle are you ready to win so you can finally become the clear mirror you were meant to be? Thanks for diving deep with us.